Hi, everyone. I want to welcome someone that is extremely fascinating, important. Been waiting for this interview. The information is going to blow everyone's mind because what Jade Sol Luna does is so unique, and it is one of the things that is most needed in this journey. His website is asterianastrology.org. And Jay, do you want to maybe give a little bit of an introduction to you, how you got there, and to what Asterian astrology is for people? I really feel this is very this this kind of astrology, I feel, has been blocked, and what has been promoted, which is the Western astrology, I feel has been done purposefully to divert everyone from the truth.
Yes, and that's a great starting point. So what is Asterian astrology? Asterian astrology is the system that Alexander the Great learned in Alexandria, Egypt. And there was a time where the priests of Alexander had to learn this particular system inside and out. And in the old time, when Alexander the Great would take over a country, he would also teach that country mysticism and metaphysics and spirituality. He had a bunch of books, and his priests did, that they would take to these various locations. And once they took a place over, would start teaching them various forms of spirituality. And some of their spirituality, I'm even involved in, even outside of the astrological part. Um, but Asterian astrology means star-based. Asteria is an ancient goddess of the stars. And so this is a system of astrology dedicated to the stars and to the goddess of the stars, Asteria. So let me first explain the difference between, Asterian, sidereal, tropical astrology. It is one of the bigger conspiracies on this planet, as you were alluding to.
Mm.
So in ancient time, this system was used throughout the entire ancient world. And we've been able to verify that. How have we been able to verify that this system was used in ancient time? It was so easy. Egypt has sidereal astrology written on their walls everywhere. They have measurements, time measurements. They're all sidereal. They are not tropical. No ancient culture used what we call tropical Western astrology. We all use the stars. So there's a couple things that took place all around the same time. Catholicism was born. They created anti-divination laws, making astrology illegal. And the actual observing of the stars was what they specifically made illegal. They put out a wrong system, so we wouldn't use this system ever again. And there's a couple of reasons why. One of them, it was pagan. And this 27 sign system, the star you're born under, you're directly connected to a god or a goddess that rules over your chart. And you have a specific relationship, like a guide relationship with that god. So when you're born under a star, you have a relationship, a guide type of relationship with an ancient deity. So that's why Catholicism said we kind of want this system to go because, well, we want to get rid of the pagan deities. Keep in mind that most ancient cultures, even like India, believe in one God. They believe that one God has innumerable personalities. The gods are the different personalities of the one, yet they are still their own individual energies, like an angel. It is an aspect of the divine, but it has its own personality. The angels of Christianity, as an example, I don't like to limit it to the word Christianity, but the angels of Western mysticism are nothing other than the gods of Eastern mysticism. They are the same. These are the divine personalities. In India, they're called the devas, the major personalities of the gods or God. So Catholicism had a very specific problem with this system. So what is Western astrology? The first day of spring equinox, the first day of spring equinox is where Catholicism starts the zodiac. And I say Catholicism, that's what happened in ancient time. It's where we start the zodiac in tropical astrology. The first day of spring equinox, if you use that month, which is March, that month of March used to be our January. And how can we prove that? Well, October means month eight. So October is the eighth month past March. November is the ninth month. Okay, so that's a calendar. So this is an ancient calendar. Catholicism put the zodiac on top of that calendar. So the first day of Aries is the first day of spring. And you wrap the 12 months around that particular mark. Well, that's our old calendar. They put the zodiac on top of the calendar. So when people were talking about astrology signs, they were talking about ancient months. And the reason they did this is because an astrologer had two jobs in ancient time. One was creating a calendar. The other one was calculating the stars. These were the two jobs of an astrologer. Because Catholicism created anti-divination laws, making the observing of the stars illegal, you could only use the calendar month zodiac to talk about publicly. What evidence do we have of that? Well, Nostradamus is the main evidence we actually have. He openly talked about Western tropical astrology while went downstairs and wrote about sidereal astrology in his books. All of his sidereal mappings are in his books, and all of his predictions are based upon sidereal, not tropical alignments. But he publicly talked about tropical. So it was not illegal to talk about tropical, which was based upon the calendar months. And it was Catholicism's way of saying we know we have an upper hand on anyone talking about the Western astrology symbols and signs because they're all wrong. That's just an old calendar. So then it started to become popular wherever Catholicism became popular. People say things like Eastern astrology and Western. There's not two zodiacs in the sky, there's just one, and we follow it. Tropical astrology follows this seasonal calendar. So it was not illegal to talk about the tropical months. That's where tropical astrology came from because ancient astrologers, when they were creating calendars, used the tropics for this, for creating calendars, which then we create the seasons through the tropics. But the stars are a whole different thing. So Western astrology starts the zodiac on the first day of spring equinox. We, sidereal astrology, Vedic and Asterian, we start the zodiac at Aries in the sky. So the first day of Aries, we use the first degree of Aries in the sky. We actually use the stars. So one uses calendar months of ancient time. The other one, sidereal, uses the actual stars. We are the stargazers. We are the ones that are, using the actual stars above us. So you use the first day of Aries in the sky as the first at the beginning of Aries, and then you wrap the 12 signs around the first day of Aries. So there's the difference between the two. One is a seasonal calendar. The other one actually uses the stars in the sky. I'm going to move this back to Asterian here in a minute, and what makes Asterian even different than Vedic and Sidereal and so forth. So there are two things that happened that are relatively astronomical. One was the birth of Catholicism and Christianity. That happened. That also happened at the same time where the zodiac in the sky, which travels 1 degree every 72 years, is called the precession of the equinox. The 12 signs of the zodiac actually aligned with the 12 signs of the zodiac and the calendar months aligned together. You think we say we're in 2024 because of Christ? That's not correct at all. It's because the zodiac and the seasonal months aligned for the first time in 26,000 years. That's why you had cultures that never even embraced Christ still saying 1 AD, 2 AD, because of the aligning of the seasonal months and the 12 signs of the zodiac. They align. That's why we're saying 2024 right now. So when Catholicism was born, that alignment also took place. And I do believe Christ had a central figure of being born at that time for a very particular reason. So while Catholicism was creating anti-divination laws, making the observance of the stars in the sky illegal, the zodiac and the 12-month calendars were aligning at the same time. So the zodiac in the West just got locked. I mean, it was just, yes.
So what year is it?
Well, I believe if we were more advanced astrologers at that time and had the technology we had now, we would be in the 1700s. So that's an interesting statement, but we did the best we can. But that alignment is the reason why we're saying 2024. It's because the zodiac is now way 24 degrees now off the zodiac. So try not to make this too confusing. An alignment happened that only happened once every 26,000 years at the time that Christianity was born. And the second was Christianity was plugging the seasonal zodiac as the calendar to stop people from observing the stars in the sky. And those two things together are why we have two different systems of astrology, those that use the stars and those that use the seasons. But let me explain why it's a problem using the seasons, because I've had people say, well, okay, I believe I'm this sign, not this sign you're talking about. So it's seasonal, and we're going to accept that astrology is season. That's why you hear, oh, it's Taurus season, it's Leo season. You hear that. There's a big problem with that. The seasons are different on this planet. Australia's seasons are the exact opposite of ours. So if we were going to create a seasonal system of astrology, the southern hemisphere would have to have an exact opposite zodiac than us. And Australia still uses Western astrology in the northern hemisphere like we do. So there's a lot of problems with Western astrology. We can call it seasonal, as some people do. Okay, he follows the stars, but we follow the seasons. But then every place that has different season on this planet is going to have a different zodiac. So you can't use northern hemisphere seasons across the whole globe and call that an astrology zodiac. So, but Asterian is different. Inside these 12 signs are 27 bright stars. These 27 bright stars were what master astrologers used in ancient time. What was the difference between an amateur astrologer and a master astrologer was the use of 27 signs. The public and amateur astrologers were only allowed to use the 12 signs. Priests only used the 27 and often never even referred to the 12 signs. This goes on to this day in India. Brahmins have to go to school for 16 years to become a Brahmin priest, and astrology is the center part of their philosophical beliefs, and they know nothing about these 12 signs. And I know if you go to my Instagram, you can see me hanging out with Brahmin priests in India, having these conversations with Brahmins all the time. My first astrologer guru ever was a Brahmin priest, and they knew nothing about the 12. Me being born at the time I was, he only referred to me as one of the 27 signs. Priests still, where ancient culture exists, learn these 27 and believe the public should have the 12. So Asterian is a priest system that was used in ancient time. I've also been able to verify that even in ancient France in the 1300s, Catholic monks were using a 27 sign system. And I have posted that also on Instagram, that they have a book showing that they were using 27 signs, not 12. They called them asterisms then. Um, so this is me unleashing a priest caste system onto the public so people can learn not only what sign they are, but what gods they're actually connected to and what guides they are actually connected to.
It's fascinating. Absolutely. I know in the Western astrology, you may be born in, well, what you think is like the month of May, making you a Gemini, but you're not actually a Gemini, you're a Taurus.
That's correct. Meanwhile, that conversation is probably the reason why Siderial hasn't fully kind of taken off in some respects. And actually, I say that, and it's funny because people don't realize this. Sidereal astrology is bigger than Western worldwide. Means India has more astrologers in their country than we do here in the United States. So when someone says, well, the popular system is Western, it's not. Vedic astrology is the most popular system of astrology on this planet because there is an astrologer almost on every street block in India. And their religion is consistently talking about astrology. So actually, out of the two, there are more Vedic astrologers than Western, but tropical consumes more of the planet. There's
Right.
more, if we're looking at tropical astrologers, they take over the globe
Yeah.
entirely, almost like other than places in the East. So, wherever Catholicism spread, it's not Eastern versus Western here.
Yeah.
It's wherever Catholicism spread is where you get Western astrology. Wherever Catholicism did not reach in ancient time, India, Tibet, China, Egypt, that's where you still get the stars above us. So, but we use 27 signs, not 12. We use the lunar zodiac and the solar zodiac both. They're both absolutely necessary to come up with a full analogy of a person. And I think people struggle shifting signs because they're only using the 12. When you add the 27 in there, this is where it gets real personal and real deep.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. Absolutely. I heard that the use of Western astrology is actually a sky that was 2000 years ago.
And that's exactly what I just said indirectly.
Yeah.
The calendar months aligned with the zodiac. So there was a period of 200 years on this planet where you could actually use the seasonal months as the zodiac because they were aligned with each other. But the zodiac in the sky moves 1 degree every 72 years. That's called the precession of the equinox.
Right.
And now it's 24 degrees off. And we're getting ready to go to a full sign off entirely. So, yes, it is where the stars in the sky were 2,000 years ago, but no longer now.
Right. Right. So in the type of astrology you do, which I find to be absolutely profound and amazing, your readings are just, they blow my mind. You discuss something that is very rare, which is these deity gods that are connected to you by birth. And the the destiny where you're perhaps needing to confront the shadow aspects. I know in the spiritual movement, everybody wants to go into high frequency, and that's a denial of the darkness. And without the darkness, we're not really going to high frequency without actually confronting that aspect. And when you do astrology, the things that you were able to see, which I said just blew my mind, um, you give a whole different take on what a person can expect in astrology. Like it's a completely different, it is a lot of information that you can actually apply to your life. I think it reveals so much. It talks about your past lives as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it can you go into all that?
Absolutely. Let's start about the past lives right there.
Mhm.
Your astrology chart manifests the second you take your first breath. When you take your first breath, the ancient goddess Hecate, that was the Greek version, or the Hindu goddess Kali, the goddesses of karma, are there to infuse your astrology chart into you the second you take your first breath. That's why it doesn't matter if you were a C-section birth, doesn't matter if you were born premature. The second you take your first breath, you were destined to take that breath at that time, and your astrology chart is infused right there and then. So your astrology chart is your karma, but from where? Your previous life. Your astrology chart doesn't mature when you're 30. It's there when you're born. So all your astrology chart is what you did in previous lives. It is the life you're in is the reaction to how you handled the life right before. And it mixes other lives into it too. Um, we believe the farther lives kind of get eaten up and balanced over time. So your most recent lives are playing a much bigger role in who you are, but all your astrology chart is your previous karma and how it's coming back to you in your current life. But there are gods that infuse this karma into your life and work directly with you. And so the Egyptians are a really good example of this. The Egyptians really did not care much about the use of astrology as far as like, oh, you're going to, go through your Saturn return. They were only interested in the gods and how they were directly relating to you. Ancient Vedic astrology that existed before Alexander the Great, they also were only concerned about the gods that ruled over your chart. They wanted to see who you were in relationship to these gods and goddesses, and that you would end up taking on the good and bad karma of some of these deities. I have to say good and bad. Not all these deities are there to bring you your good karma. Some of them are there to bring your bad karma as well. So ancient astrology was, what deities are you connected to? And you were supposed to serve those deities as well, as they reflected a part of your own higher self. Then the Greeks got into this. The Greeks got into astrology, and this is why there are Vedic texts. And in my book, Asterian Astrology, The Lost System of Alexander the Great, that's my first book that I had written, it has a passage in there stating right from the Vedas. It says, well, the Greeks may be barbarians, but they brought with them the knowledge of the stars. That's in Vedic text. Now, that particular text upsets Vedic astrologers. Okay, so Asterian is this mixture of energies and paths, and it kind of is upsetting to almost every single tradition out there because India is, well, their Brahmins will tell you we created astrology. India believes astrology came right from India. Well, there are passages in Vedic texts that are stating that the Greeks brought astrology with them. My personal opinion about this is, I'm getting ready to explain right now. India had a system that was ancient. Egypt had ancient systems. Babylonia had ancient systems, and they were highly advanced systems of astrology. Matter of fact, I have a book that's from Harvard that is just the mathematics of the Babylonians. That's it. And they were all sidereal and master astrologers and so forth. They wanted to know the ancients, your connection to these gods. The Greeks said, how can we use this for practical life? This is where the Greeks became master astrologers. How can we use these gods and make it where they're accessible to humans, and that you can sit down as an astrologer and give someone a reading and make it practical to the life that you're in? The Greeks mastered the art of sitting someone down and giving a reading. So when northern India, Alexander the Great took over northern India, he left a book in northern India called the Yavana Jataka. Yavana Jataka, which means the speaking of the Greeks in Sanskrit. So Alexander the Great left this book in northern India, and Brahmins got a hold of it and said, oh my God, they have figured out, the Greeks did, how to use astrology in the most practical of ways. So let's embrace it. Let's absorb it into our gods-based astrology system and create one coherent system for the public. Hence, modern Vedic astrology began through Alexander the Great. So that right there, I already know, is infuriating to Indians, which I don't like. I don't like bothering Indians because their system is advanced. India is my spiritual home. I mean, I love India. India is my favorite place on this entire planet. But if we just get into facts, their own books are saying, thank you, Greeks, for bringing us the wisdom of the stars. So I believe all kinds of cultures even Native American had these incredible ancient systems, but the Greeks are responsible for modernizing it and creating a system that you could use for the sake of human analysis in day-to-day life. So the Greeks were what they say in the Vedas, the masters of the stars. Asterian astrology is the reconstruction of that book that Alexander the Great left in northern India called the Yavana Jataka. My book, Asterian Astrology, The Lost System of Alexander the Great, is the translation of it, and in the back even has the actual Yavana Jataka in it, so you can go read the Yavana Jataka. I definitely translated it in a way where it's far more accessible, easier to read, and there are things I did add into it on my own. I did name these stars on my own accord. There are elements of this system that were not used in the Yavana Jataka that I had put together to myself. So I have, I believe, modernized this ancient book in a way that also can be used for the modern world that we live in.
Incredible. Do you have a copy of it on your desk by chance
Um, I have it right here. I
for
don't know if you
everyone to
can see.
see?
Yeah,
Maybe the other way, yeah, and hold it up for
there you go.
everyone to see. And that is that on Amazon or is that on your
Amazon,
website?
you can get it everywhere.
Okay.
It's available Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and it's a book that I teach with that book. I am currently creating other Asterian astrologers right now, and that's the central book that we use for that.
Amazing. Amazing. Can you talk a little bit about when you're looking at a chart and you can see which deities are connected to you, what your relationships are, and information about who you are based on that?
Yeah.
And how you said some are here for positive karma and some are here for negative, depending on all of your karmic lives.
And so this is where we bring a path called Agora into everything, and Agora means it's a dark path in India that I've also westernized. So let me just real quick state I've westernized all these things because my guru in India asked me to. Um,
Oh.
if my guru didn't ask me to westernize everything, I would be a Vedic astrologer right now and worshiping the goddess Colie. And I was very upset when he asked me to westernize this because I want you to westernize everything you've learned here in India. And so I, a, at that time, I'd worshipped Kali for a decade, and had incredibly powerful experience with her. I was not in the mood to shift into a Greek version of her, nor was I in the mood to take these ancient Vedas and translate them into some modern format that's westernized. But when I started doing it, my guru knew two things. One, it was important for the future, and he knew I had connections to ancient Roman Greco mysticism that I did not know. And he knew that. And he knew by me actually westernizing everything, I would start to unlock previous lives of Western mysticism, as we call it. And he knew I was deeply connected to this goddess Hecate, who was the Greek version of Kali. So these stars, these 27 stars, are connected to Agoric philosophy. And what is Agoric philosophy? It means to live without fear, to live without terror. So it's a darker path. Kali is heavily connected to in India. I'm westernizing Agora underneath the goddess Hecate, which is absolutely the right thing to do. We have good and bad karma as human beings. As a matter of fact, people don't realize that true spirituality comes from the balance of things. We have to balance an equal amount of light and dark. We have to. And that's the human experience. So when people talk about astrology from an agoric standpoint, we believe the subject has a darker element to it because most of the planets are negative. We only have two really technically positive planets. That's Venus and that's Jupiter. The sun, even in India, is hot and malefic. Mercury is mutable. It takes on whatever qualities are around it. The moon we see as having a mutable element. It takes on whatever's around it. And then we have Mars, malefic. Saturn's malefic. The north and south node, the biggest misunderstanding in all of Western astrology. I don't know where they got this. The north node is your future, the south node is your past. That is basically someone writing a book in the last 60 years and just puts out an idea and now everybody believes it. The north and south node were the what we call the agoric points in your chart, the deep shadow work, the darkness in your chart. The north node I call Medusa's head. The south node I call Medusa's body. These are where you have the most challenging karma in your chart. The north and south node are monsters. Then you get into the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, they're all malefic. So we only have two good planets. It means the Earth experience is about strength and endurance. It is about the shadow side of things. So, you know, in my path, I always make that statement. If someone's just talking about light, they're just trying to sell you something, because that's not the way this whole thing works here. Because if astrology is the basis of our belief system, which is definitely mine, there's a lot more dark going on out there than positive, and that's why life is a harder type of experience. So Agora is about how do we create strength in people to handle this life experience? Well, get comfortable with darkness. Basically, light is that beautiful spring day, feels amazing. But those days are far and few of the dark days that we actually have, where we're learning about our inner strength, we're learning about the human experience. These planets are consistently bringing about one challenge after the other. Look at this planet right now. And not only look at this planet right now, the planet has always been like this. People seem to think that things are, this state or that state. It's always been like this. I mean, World War II, World War I, civil wars, 4,000 years of human history, we only have 27 years of peace in it all. So the human experience is about learning to be strong in yourself. And that's why being like Buddha and Christ amplified endurance. You have to be able to endure whatever comes your way. Agora said, how do we do that? Let's find a path where we deal specifically with darkness. The Agoric belief is if you can be comfortable with the things that make you uncomfortable, then you have peace now. Things are going to make you uncomfortable. Be nice if we could just sit in that summer breeze all day and all year round. That's not the way it works. We have to be able to be strong enough to handle whatever life comes our way. So Agora said, well, maybe actually let's get comfortable with some of the most wrathful of all deities. There's a big difference in ancient mysticism. I'm not even going to say Eastern, ancient mysticism regarding dark spirits and modern belief, which has pretty much been Christianized almost entirely. So Agora was about getting comfortable with the darkest deities out there. So if you can sit in the midst of Colie, which I believe she is number one for challenging energies out there. And matter of fact, Agora is like the way a natural Agora, and I'm one of those people, is like, what is the darkest thing I can meditate on?
Yeah.
Because we believe if you get comfortable with that energy and the intensity of it, then you open yourself up to greater light in your life. So it is centered around dark deities, which you meditate, invoke, bring into your sphere, and they bring a feeling of uncomfort, trauma, challenge, sadness, depression, Saturn-based stuff, North Node-based stuff, Pluto-based stuff. That brings us enter, and then what you do is you meditate on getting comfortable with these energies. Means you invoke them often, and the first few times you do it, it can actually throw you off. That's why people are afraid of like worshiping Colie and stuff like that. It's like, ooh, what's going to happen to me if I worship Colie? Well, she's going to start teaching you to be strong in yourself over a period of time. So Agora is about the meditation on darker based things to create a peace with these things in yourself so you can have peace no matter what comes your way. Whether light comes your way or dark comes your way, you're able to embrace either one and have an infinite amount of peace in your life because you can accept light and dark both. If you're just focusing on light, you are setting yourself up for hardship.
Yeah.
Because if it's true, you have to experience an equal amount of light and dark in a lifetime. Well, here's the Agoric belief. If you meditate on darkness and you bring that darkness into your spiritual life in your altar room, then you don't have to deal with darkness in your personal life. It's being dealt with there. So you can now have peace. You can now have abundance. There's statements in India that Agoras become rich. They often work with celebrities. Because they've removed so much of their darkness, or balanced, which is a better word, balanced so much of their darkness in their spiritual life, their human life somewhat starts to become free of those calamities, those traumas. So here's I live in this pretty home in Joshua Tree. You're seeing my upstairs. I've had this pretty interesting life that's changed dramatically from being Agora. But in my back of the room is an Agoric room dedicated to Hecate, and I can't even show someone who comes to my house that room. If they walked into that room, they'd be like, "Oh my God, that's the scariest room I've ever been in." But our goal is consciousness. It's like, yes, there are things in that room. I made my own statue of Colie. She has a bull head, mine does, and she's all dressed up in black. Agoras often do have human bones and things of that nature in their room. I do own human skulls from Tibet, from Tibetan monks. They're in there, and so you have to kind of embrace this feeling of deep uncomfort when you're in there. Yet our goal is light. We want our lives to be more peaceful. We believe there is a balance of light and dark you have to have in your life, and we're dealing with our darkness there, so we don't have to deal with our darkness here. So I went from living in my car when I was younger to having a life where I can live in a two-story home in Joshua Tree and have this relatively abundant life, which I believe is not that I'm some amazing being, and that's not some, direct statement about look at me, I'm impressive. It's the work that I've done in Agora, because I mean, I've had to scoop out even a lot more shit than other people have in this life. My family upbringing was literally so intense that I think some people would view it as one of the hardest upbringings they've ever seen in some respects. I had a mother that tried to commit suicide in front of me often. It's like, so I ended up going to India when I was very young in life because, as my guru said, your true family was there. And my guru said, you thank your mom for doing that. Because if she did not do that, you wouldn't end up in India when you're 18 years old. So she got you there, and
Yeah.
all the extremities there led you to here. Meanwhile, so I went from that to living out of my car to being diagnosed with a serious heart condition to go into India, um, getting caught up in Kali worship and then watching my life completely shift because I started dealing with all that darkness that was in my early life. I started dealing with it in my spiritual life, not in my human life. And all of a sudden, my career started to expand. My life became more balanced and peaceful. And here I am worshiping this wrathful goddess, this goddess that people tell me, oh, I would never worship her. I'm afraid of what she'd bring into my world. But I'm like, she's brought nothing in my world other than peace. And matter of fact, she's brought that balance that my life was not heading in that direction. That all this darkness probably would have spilled over in other ways because of my upbringing.
Right.
It didn't. Agora shifted this whole thing where I was able to have a life that is comfortable and peaceful, almost like I state the goddess Hecate slash Kali is like, you're now in alignment now. So it's time for you to experience having more in your life, more abundance, more things of that nature. And I am also aware she could take it in a heartbeat if she feels like it. My life is kind of dedicated to this agoric path. But Agora is the path of worshiping darker deities, Kali being one of the most centralized focuses of Agora. And the goal of this is to create a sense of balance in your life so you can have less friction in your external life, all your intense energies dealt with in your spiritual life. And that's why, um, you know, if people come over to my house, I'm like, you can hang out in my house. You just can't go in that back room. It's even got a keep out sign on the door.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, I have let people in it. And if someone is kind of ready to kind of embrace Agora, I let them actually in that room. Yeah.
Right. So would you say that this is a way to finally deal with karma in a way that you don't have to live out the karma in your 3D life out there in ruins?
It's exactly what it is. And
Mm.
it's, we have karma of light and dark both.
Right.
Astrology is often more about those challenges and that intensity. So I believe personally, for me, not going to say Agora is the path for everybody. I mean, I believe everybody's on a good path. My guru in India said, if you want to know how many paths there are, that's how many faces you see. Everyone is their own path. So Agora works for me, but I absolutely do believe I've been dealing with my more challenging negative karma through my spiritual life,
Yeah.
which has exempted from being experienced in my human life. Now, I've had human experiences that are challenging, and nor do I want to come off like, oh, everything's just been perfect here since I've been in Agora. But I would literally say, from all honesty, that 75% of my negative karma that I was born into was reduced by being an agora. And that reduced might not even be the right word, worked out in my
Yeah.
spiritual life, not in my human life.
Incredible. What would you say with, let's say, somebody who's experiencing from the time that they're born demonic attacks?
Love the question, and absolutely real. So first of all, um, an agora deals with we deal with possession. We deal with things like that. We do believe spirits are fully capable of doing that, but we believe everything is karmic balance. As the Buddhists say, take responsibility for everything that has ever happened to you and free yourself. You are responsible for what happens. There's no rogue Satan out there
Yep.
trying to make things happen to God. God can annihilate that force in a second. Shiva could destroy these things
Yep.
in a heartbeat. We are responsible for that. So if someone, which this has happened to me, and I have a whole story about that by itself that almost
Okay.
became a movie in Hollywood, literally. But if you are in a previous life a magician, and lots of us were, and you're making spirits do what they don't want to do. It's like, hey, I'm going to put you in a brass jar. Spirits can't move in and out of brass, as an example. So you can actually do an invocation, pull a spirit into a brass jar, kind of like the genie, like the lamp, so to speak. You can put a spirit in there by drawing a diagram, yantra. Technical term is sigil. They say sigil, but it's sigil, and the spirit has to go into that brass jar, and you can make it do whatever you want it to do because you can threaten it. I'll put you back in this brass jar if you don't make that person fall in love with me. So that you've just enraged a spirit. You've just made one extremely upset. You're forcing a spirit to do stuff it doesn't feel like doing. And let's say we do it to multiple spirits because one spirit represents this realm, another spirit represents that realm. You've infuriated a bunch of spirits. So they will wait for a life that you forget how to use that. And then they have full karmic right to make you do what you don't want to do. And they can accost you, they can attack you, and the universe will let it happen because the person created the karma for the experience to take place. So in possession, if someone comes to me, this is happening right now. I have 3 different people I'm working with this particular subject, the possession. I'm making them fully responsible for it. You're going to apologize to these spirits that you've enraged that are now wrathful. If you want them to leave you alone, you're going to have to take responsibility for the actions you have created. And it's had a perfect success rate of just making people honor and devote themselves for a period of time to the actual deities, even in a service-based way, offering them incense they would like, offering them foods they would like. The spirit changes its tune, takes on a much lighter note, and relieves itself from the possession. And so we, to remove a spirit, make the person apologize to it for what it's done to it in a previous incarnation.
And that's why a lot of magic, a lot of witchery um, is very dangerous because they're forcing a lot of these beings to do their bidding.
That's correct. And that is not proper magic either. There is proper magic, and that's not proper magic. That is Western magic. Aleister Crowley kind of
Yeah.
exploited that form. I'm going to make you do my will for me and all that. Oh, that's not the way it works in India. Like agoras and all that stuff. If we, I'm actually strangely enough an advocate for magic. I think if your mind is good, magic is good because we need things in this human experience to
Yeah.
have some divine experiences outside of this realm to really make us feel that connection. And I think magic is a pretty quick way to have you start to realize, oh, there are forces out there. I don't have to worry about beliefs and having faith. You get actual experiences. If you start getting into deep magic, like in India, I learned magic inside now. We don't see things as red and black magic and all that stuff. We see magic as your energy in connection with the divine.
Right. Right.
Okay, so an example of that would be like, let's say, black magic, using magic to harm someone. Well, will an agora learn black magic? Oh, yeah. Because let's just say, an example, you have a friend of yours that's abducted and you feel it's your calling to change this experience. White magic is not going to solve that problem for you, or black magic will. See, there are reasons why a good person would use magic that would be considered dark. If your mind is good, all magic is good. If your mind is bad, all magic is bad. Even someone with a bad mind is going to use white magic for their own good. Someone that uses magic in its proper sense is using it for the betterment of other people it, in
Right.
all respects. So, can you use even darker magic for the sake of good? Absolutely, 100%. So, we call it the black arts. It's no different than martial arts. In martial arts, you're learning to kill someone. It doesn't mean you're going to go around killing people. And only an ignorant person behaves like that. Intelligent people don't go around harming people because we understand karma. One of the basic rules of an agora is you don't ever want Colie's negative eyes looking at you,
Yeah.
meaning you just created karma. Now you, my child, I have to inflict my this karma back. You now hurt you, and you now have hurt me because I have to do something that I don't really want to do. So in
Right.
Agora, you're like, you never want Collie's negative eyes at you
Yeah.
ever. So we live in a place where, yes, there's magic all over our lives. That's true. Agoras live very magical lives, and most of the ones I know. There's a whole other sect of Agora that they could disagree. Um, Meanwhile, magic is a huge part of connecting to spirits. When I first started learning magic, it was not for the sake of using it my will. I want to know what spirits felt like. I want to know very specific deities, what they felt like. You would invoke them, and instead of creating a circle of protection around you, an agora, you're like, get in the circle. It's just me and you. And that fear of, oh, what are they going to do to me? What are they going to do? We don't have that. Here's one of my favorite statements in agora. If demons are your friends, your karma is clean. So let's just say there are demons around you and they're not inflicting harm upon you. It means you are karmically balanced. So if you're not using spirits to do a bunch of negative stuff,
Yeah.
they actually like the experience. And, like Santeria and Voodoo has very similar agoric traditions here, where you want them in the circles with you. They're not going to harm you because you're not trying to abuse the spirit to go make it do crap it doesn't feel like doing. You want an experience. They also want to have that experience with you, so you get to have an experience with a entity, a deity. So we believe, because our minds are clean, because we understand what is going on in the universe, that we can work with these spirits in ways that they feel is enjoyable and the way you feel, and you're together, you can create experiences that are spiritual. And so we do talk about magic. We do get involved in these things. I've learned magic inside and out, every single form of magic I've learned. And have absolutely no interest in using anything that creates negative karma with me and my goddess. I'm not interested in that. And that's by bending some will that she didn't want bent, or
Right.
to do something for selfish purposes. I don't want her evil eye ever looking at me. I want her love. But is an experience where she might herself go, I might want you involved in this. I
Mhm.
might want you to help this particular person out. And we might have to go a little bit dark in order to achieve this positive result. Absolutely,
Right.
100% that has happened, where I believe that she called upon me specifically to work with her in a fashion that was in use of something that was more intense, but for a karmic experience that was bettering the situation.
So, what would be the right way to use magic where you're not forcing beings to do something against their will?
And there's where intuition has to come in. You've
Okay.
got to be aware enough
Mhm.
and intuitive enough, and you have to. I believe that through not any personal greatness, because I don't believe in personal greatness. I believe we're
Yeah.
all human beings, and I believe we earn everything, every gift that we have, we've earned. If someone's born, oh, I have this psychic gift, I was born with it. It's not a gift. You earned it your most recent life. We are all equal human beings. But you have to have intuition strong enough to know whether you're being called to do that or not. When I say that I was called on a few occasions
Yeah.
by Colie, she could have done it herself. I know that, but she
Mhm.
wanted my involvement just for a human experience and for me to have an experience that I could feel connected to her. And she was like, I'm going to be doing this, but I would not mind your involvement in this at all. And you can feel it. You can absolutely feel it. And on a few of the occasions, the situations she called me on were things that were really intense. Really, really, really intense. Um, I won't even get into that particular part of it, but you could feel the natural, this is the right thing to do. This is absolutely the right thing for me to be involved in this situation and to assist in which way I can work that you're already doing. So you have to have the intuition to know whether you're being called upon or not. And you know, that's where the depth of a spiritual practice has to come into play before you should be any type of agora and or witch or practitioner of any type of mysticism. You should be awake enough to know. And that's my problem with the West right there, is there's a lot of people that don't know. They're spending a lot of time writing books and talking, and they really don't know. And that floods through commercialism. And then we have a bunch of people believing stuff that has absolutely no real truth in its center. But so intuition is the answer. You've
Yeah.
got to be intuitive enough to know whether that deity is actually pulling that card for you or not.
Can you explain a little bit about what you experienced in this intensity so people can understand, you know, what can happen
Now, are you referring to
when you helped
when I helped? Like, what did I go through?
Mm.
So someone contacted me out of the blue, and I'll just kind of, because I know these people, and that's the reason why I can't get into the story. Someone was involved with someone that was harming children in
right?
every which way, shape, or possible.
Okay.
And this person was involved with this person without knowing that this person was a really bad person. So someone I knew personally
Yeah.
was involved with someone that was harming children. And so this feeling came over me at night. And at night, I generally do late night spiritual practices. And let me also say, I've been worshiping Colie / Hecate for 28 years. So these are very rare types of experiences. And she actually gave me the entire experience internally
Wow.
of what was going on in this situation. And again, this is not because I'm advanced and I'm better than everybody else. It's nothing like that. This is 28 years of solid practice. So it's earned stuff. It's not, look at me, how important I am. These are things we earn. You dedicate yourself to something, you get experience with it over time. So she gave me a very specific, and she showed me that this person was in danger by someone, and wanted my involvement. And so I started this whole practice, started even using a very specific spiritual practice I learned in India that I've never used before ever. And I could feel her involvement in it.
Yeah.
And we sent energy to this male, and it gave her a jolt, and she left. And he eventually went to prison for child molestation. And
Wow.
I believe that he was a great deal away from being caught, from doing what he was doing, and she wanted this sped up. She's like, okay, I don't want him hurting anyone anymore. So she wanted some other involvement, and she involved me, and that person ended up going to prison for child molestation. And the person that we spared from also this awful experience with this person also recognized all at the same time that the person she was with was involved in all these and left before she could be harmed. And I believe that this was a situation that was kind of orchestrated by Hecate / Colie. Meanwhile, I have to state that she could have done this entirely on her own. She didn't technically need me, but I'm 28 years in dedication to her, and she just wanted me to be involved, and she wanted me to witness this and be a part of it. And that to me is real magic. You're a part of something.
Yeah. That's
You're
amazing.
not creating it. You are a part of something, and there's where the intuition comes into play.
Yeah. Divine justice.
That's right.
Incredible. Now, you said when you were young, you did experience being attacked by demonic forces.
Yes.
Do you
Strongly.
want to talk a bit about that?
I used to be pulled out of my body often, meaning they call it sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
It honestly enough, it happened to me in almost the same location, and that's why I knew there was something very odd. And it was one of my first experiences when I was younger. I'm talking about in my early teen years of realizing there was something deeply spiritual going on. Was I would have those, dreams where I was pulled out of my body. I couldn't scream in my dream. And then all of a sudden I'd feel this rush of going back into my body, and then I would scream out loud. I'm like, wow, I was actually out of my body. Like some energy was keeping me out of my body and preventing me from coming back into my body. On a few occasions, I had marks. When I was younger, there were a few occasions where I had marks, like one of the spirits grabbed my wrist and actually held my wrist and was stopping me from trying to get back into my body. Okay, so
Wow.
that happened to me. And in one location, I remember I went somewhere to see a friend of mine. My family came with me, and at night I'm having these out of body horror based experiences. And then a few years later, I went back to the same place and didn't have experiences in between, go back to the space and started having it all over again. And this was a place in Arizona where I grew up, and then went back for the third time and it started up again. And so it was the first experience I ever had of something otherworldly was going on. And I started to be able to even pull it together myself that some entity was trying to pull me out of my body. And the
Whoa.
experiences in it, like when I was out of my body, were absolutely horrific, meaning what I was experiencing with it, and these random flashes of violence and all these other various things would come into it. So when I went back to my body, I'd be horrified. I would not go back to bed that night. And oddly enough, found it odd that right when the sun would come up, it would disappear. Like even the fear that I was in at the night would slowly disappear. And then that stopped. And then I went to India and started practicing Agora. And then it was explained to me without him addressing me purposely. To me, he was talking to the whole entire group. He started explaining how if you are naturally an Agora, you will start having experiences with spirits at a very early age. Some of them just want your attention. They just are, hey, remember me? It wasn't that long ago that you and I were connecting. And some of these spirits have work in this world that is dark. So when people are talking about like a demon as an example, I'm in agreement. There's demons and stuff like that out there. But I believe they're friendly spirits. Their work in the world is hard, but they are not. And I remember one of my Agoric teachers comparing them to like a Rottweiler. It was like, no, they're dangerous and they can be dangerous, but they're sweet on the inside. And if you don't have any fear, they're exceptionally sweet. If you have a lot of fear in you, well, spirits can actually become more fearsome. Your own fear provokes the fear in them and they take on these kind of ferocious forms. Um, but yeah, so as he started talking about, I'm like, that's exactly what's happening to me. And I asked him, I raised my hand, I said, I have had these experiences with spirits and they have been troublesome. I mean, there was one that gave me these nightmares that were so horrific. I remember them to this day. I mean, the worst nightmares I ever had were when I was young,
Yeah.
uh, because of this one specific spirit that was around me. But I asked him about it. I said, "This is what was going on." He said, "Yes." He said, "But he goes, you're an Agora." He goes, "I believe that one was being friendly. He didn't technically harm you. He wanted you to recognize, hey, do you remember me?" And he said, I said, "So what was that negative energy though?" I mean, I said, "The truth is I would just state that I felt some really negative energy, but at the same time," he said, "That's their work.
Yeah.
It's not their personality.
Yeah.
It's the work you feel around them."
Yeah.
One rules over car accidents as an example. And I, strangely enough, have this really strange connection to one of these spirits that's around Hecate all the time that's constantly dealing with car accidents. It means no matter where I live, whether I'm Joshua Tree or when I was in Los Angeles, if there was a car accident within 10-mile radius and someone died, they would come right to me. And I would have this work getting someone out of trauma. And that still goes on to this day. And I've never said that ever before.
Wow. So you mean they died and their spirit comes to you right after they die?
If they're traumatized
Yeah.
and they need someone to
Wow.
kind of state, again, let me also reiterate something here. Hecate can take care of this stuff herself. So there are people, when you're on a path for a while, it doesn't matter whether your path is Colie, Jesus, Buddha, you start to become a part of that work. And we have it set up like this. If you worship one deity, this is why I mentioned single pointed focus on a path and a deity. If you worship one deity for 7 years, you start to have experiences after the 7th year. Now, if you're worshiping it before the previous life, that can be much quicker than 7 years.
Yeah.
But the 7th to the 14th year, you start to hear and experience deeper connections to that spirit. And after the 21st year of worshiping one deity, you become a part of that deity's work. So if someone stays on a path for longer than 21 years, they become a part of the work of that deity. So what was happening to me is after a period of time, I was becoming a part of Hecate's work, and car accidents. This whole crossroad thing has a bunch of different meanings to me.
Wow.
One of them is actually going out the crossroads, making very serious decisions, but accidents that were in crossroads seem to be connected to her too, as if there was some other karmic. And so if a spirit was in a transition, she would let me be a part of that work because of how long I've been dedicated to her spiritually. So then she would pull the spirit into my world, and I would directly end up communicating with the spirit, letting them know what had happened, letting them know that everything is okay. And there are some spirits that will stay in a purgatory state
Yeah.
unless someone is telling them it's okay. And there are
Yeah.
some spirits that can stay there for an incredibly long period of time, just wanting a human or some type of spiritual acknowledgement. I had a friend that died in a car accident, and I did not know that this friend had died in a car accident until many, many years later. And when the person came to me in, actually here in Joshua Tree when I lived here before, and I'm like, oh my God, this person had passed on. And I'm like, I remember him clearly, his name, and I interacted with him just a little bit, and he immediately transcended. Just to find out 2 weeks later, his brother contacted me and said, I don't know if you know this, but my brother died many years ago. And I'm like, I was never told because no one contacted me to tell me, but yeah, I do know that. I didn't tell him how, and nor did I want to tell him, hey, your brother was stuck in some purgatory from being in an accident for a while. But that was the case. And oddly enough, that purgatory state where a spirit can be left there for a period of time is also orchestrated by karma from that person in previous lives that put them in that position.
So this is much like being having the ability as a medium, because you're able to communicate here and sometimes see.
That happens in this line of work. I have no control over it, so I could never advertise that. Meanwhile, does it happen?
Yeah.
Often. I'm in this particular life, and even in this job as an astrologer, there are innumerable experiences I have where some spirit will come in and say something directly to me about the person that's in front of me. That's happened many, many times. And there is but because I couldn't state, oh, I'm a medium, because I have no control over when it happens and
Right.
when it doesn't, and I prefer the life of letting her remove that veil when it's needed, as opposed to being caught in situations where, oh, I don't feel a connection to this person, but I'm being forced in to talk about spirits and the afterlife. So now I have to present information that might not even be real, which oddly enough is very common in the medium world. There's a lot of psychics, and I use Sylvia Brown as probably the chief of that were caught in that struggle, which is a very real one where you're having people constantly pressing you for information, and if you don't feel connected to the person, you might not get information at all. Then you start randomly saying things that don't apply to any of it. And then you go on YouTube and you look at Sylvia Brown fails and people like that, and the amount of things they were wrong about is just astronomical. But do I believe they're not mediums? No, I believe that there are certain experiences where you have that connection, where it is your job to involve yourself. And then there's just times where, that's why I love astrology. You can have those experiences, but let's say I'm not. I got the science of Asterian astrology in front of me.
Right.
So I don't have to have those experiences to do the work that I do. And they're not really that common anyways.
Yeah.
But if I'm connected to the experience, there is a mediumship ability that will come about when it's necessary.
Right. What does Agora say about the situation with regards to having so many souls that are still magnetically attached here and aren't moving on? I mean, I do have a lot of experiences with them that just come in. I've had to train myself to stop it because I'm like, come on, stop. I've unfortunately, I see many that are real in the flesh, so I can't tell they're dead until something weird happens. But I'm seeing like, wow, we've got a lot of people here that are
See,
stuck.
that is totally real to me because of even what my guru said. He said the astral realm is filled with spirits.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
first of all, they have to be reincarnated in the right time,
Mhm.
on the right date,
Yeah.
in the right decade,
Yeah.
in the right environment that suits their karma. So there are an incredible amount.
Yeah.
My guru said in the actual millions and billions of spirits in the astral waiting for that perfected time to be reborn to deal with their karma here on earth. So that's the reason for it in Agora, is that you can't just reincarnate right away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you have to experience you, and you create a karma to experience these other afterlife experiences. Some of them are negative. Some of the afterlife experiences, it's like, people talk about, I like there's a lot of talk in paganism, like we don't believe in hell because Christianity created it. I'm like, no, it didn't. The river Styx, the lake of fire, is ancient,
Mhm.
way, 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 way longer and older than Christian hell. And it was specifically for murderers. If you harm people, let's use this is now we're going to get real agoric here. Let's talk about serial killers for a minute.
Yeah.
If you harm someone and you physically harm someone, that's how you go to hell in ancient time. If you are a real menace to people and you collect so much karma,
Yeah.
the river Styx was there to burn it all off. So you didn't have to have let's say Jeffrey Dahmer killed 18 people. Well, that is 18 deaths that he now has to experience karmically. Well, hell, the river Styx can make that just 3 lives as opposed to 18 in a row being killed. Well, he just experienced everything karmically he did, which is what hell is where you experience
Right.
the emotion and the trauma you created. And that trauma then is induced back upon you that you actually induced. And, you know, my guru talked about Jeffrey Dahmer, and I haven't talked about this on recently, but he said, and we're talking about someone that knew nothing about Western consciousness. He didn't
Yeah.
know who Jeffrey Dahmer was, but if you gave him a name,
Yeah.
he was this infinite psychic. He could tell you everything. So I was talking about Jeffrey Dahmer because the biggest radio show I have ever done was on a FM station in New York in the 90s about Jeffrey Dahmer. And someone said, "Hey, would you like to go on this show in New York? You're going to be talking to probably about 75,000 people, and we want to talk about serial killers." And someone said, "You're the guy to talk to." I'm like, "Yeah, that's probably me," because it's an agoric
Yeah.
subject to talk about things that are uncomfortable. So I was in India when I was asked to do this show. And I was going to be back in the United States to do the show, which I actually did it. But I went to my guru and I said, "Yeah, they want me to do this radio show on Jeffrey Dahmer." And he literally closes his eyes and he said, "Jeffrey Dahmer." He said, "He was a girl." And I'm like, "No, no, no, he wasn't a girl." I'm like, "No." He goes, "Listen to me. He was a girl in his life before, and he was eaten by cannibals in Haiti. And he would be reborn in a place where those people who ate him, so this is heavy, were there. And that's where the urge to eat people had come from." But he's channeling this. My guru, who's like an all-seeing master, he said, "So now," because he had passed on already in prison, Jeffrey Dahmer died. He said, "Now he has to be eaten by an alligator as a boy. And then he's done. And right after that life, he will be clean and he'll be the nicest person you ever met." I believe our consciousness
Wow.
has tapped into that. As a collective consciousness,
Mhm.
we developed this weird
Yeah.
compassion for a serial killer like Jeffrey Dahmer out of the blue, as if we don't know that wherever he is, he's a good person now. That he's been
Incredible.
through hell and then got eaten by an alligator. And I actually think I even know when that happened. Some boy in Florida crossing a river got eaten in front of all of his friends. And I'm like, this was said, my guru,
Right.
simultaneously at the same time this happened. And I went, and all of a sudden we're now all empathetic and compassionate towards some of these serial killers. I believe we've tapped into their consciousness where they're at now and know they're now living normal lives, having normal human experience. I believe Jeffrey Dahmer is one of those that's currently now somewhere having a normal life experience. So when we see an image of Jeffrey Dahmer, we don't have that horror image of him anymore as much as we do is like, Jeffrey Dahmer. I know people that are like, "Oh, I love Jeffrey Dahmer." Like, how can you love someone that killed 8 people? Well, I believe we're picking up on the consciousness that he's now been through all this these hells and karmic transitions, and now he's on a path where he is balanced.
Mhm.
That's my feeling of why we've now developed. We're seeing shows about him all the time. You hear people online talking about him, and they're even talking about him like in a positive way. It's like, I believe that's because we tapped into where he's at now in his consciousness.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you said about that boy that got eaten by an alligator in Florida. He was escaping from some authorities, I think, wasn't he?
That I never knew because I was in
Yeah,
India when it happened. And so it happened right around the time that he said it.
yeah,
And there was even a, this is me just being honest, there's even a moment where I thought my guru arranged it through
yeah.
my conversation with him. Like it tapped
Wow.
into Jeffrey Dahmer's spirit and was like, how do I free this spirit? Oh, he's got to go through this once. Unfortunately, there, and even went on to say that there was a point where Jeffrey Dahmer in his consciousness was asked to stop, as if he kind of balanced everything,
Right,
but he
right.
kept going and he kept going. And
Wow.
that means he started building up new karma,
Hmm.
and then hence an experience of being eaten by an alligator, and then his life right after, he'd be free. And I believe that's where he's at right now. Yeah.
Incredible, incredible. Okay, I've got a tricky question for you. What would you say about the information regarding um, this matrix system basically being a factory for recycling souls, but it's not really necessary anymore?
Well, this matrix element.
Mm.
Okay, so now the second part that's not needed anymore. What do you mean by that?
Well, this is a lot of information that's coming through where people at this level of consciousness are saying and feeling that they no longer require the karmic lords. They no longer require to return to a karmic cycle, that was actually a part of a machine factory system to lock in souls here in this matrix system to feed something that is, that created the matrix essentially.
Now, are you, because there's, in my day of
Mhm.
being an astrologer, there's several different types of conspiracies that we get into. And conspiracies I believe in as long as they're not political. I
Yeah,
don't believe in any
yeah,
political conspiracies.
yeah,
Those are governed by something else that's more.
definitely.
But like as an example, that what you just said could talk. I've had people ask about reptilians and things of that nature.
Mhm.
Are you referring to that particular type? See, India already sees life as a matrix. That right on the other side of this world that we're in right now is a world filled with spirits, entities,
Mhm.
beings,
Mhm.
souls. So when you say matrix to me, I
Right.
believe that we already are in that.
So do
And
I.
the
Yes.
more that
Yep.
you advance, the more that veil between this world and the other side is broke down, and you can
Yep.
see that. Now, that whole a machine with souls, that has a couple different meanings to me because of the world I'm in as an astrologer
Yep.
and the different types of conspiracies, which I love,
Yep.
we get conversations about, and that can go a couple ways. So that's why I'm curious. Are you referring to more or less alien type of conspiracies, or is this more coming from, because I hear that talk with
Okay.
reptilians as an
Yeah.
example.
Right. And that would be a part of it, but I think it's more of, if you look at the Gnostic writings, where there was a low guy in charge that created a counterfeit copy of the universe and then trapped the souls in here, created a machine, a reality machine, a factory of recycling the souls to keep everybody in this version, which is actually like a facsimile copy of the original, that we're not actually in the original verse. We're actually in this facsimile copy to keep this low guy, this parasitic god, um, alive, because it has no prime creation energy. So it's taking it from us. And the souls got, trapped in here thinking it was the original verse, but it wasn't. And now, and of course they, have prime creation energy, so they're the fuel essentially. And that karma has been created as a means by which to keep the prime creation energy here in this counterfeit for copy feeding this low guy.
And it's interesting, we did a show pulling the thread where she brought some of these things up in her own way, and you know I don't I so this is not an unfamiliar conversation.
Okay.
Meanwhile, I have to imagine I was sitting in front of my guru in India, and if I brought this up,
Right.
he would say, you're on this purpose, you're on this planet for the sole purpose of getting God realization, and it can supersede any type of entrapment. Once
Right.
you start to realize yourself spiritually, you can go beyond any type of, I use the word bondage, that can be created by other entities or spirits. And he said, so once you free yourself spiritually, you free yourself from all forms of illusion or bondage that are created. So in a sense, he would just say that, again, Buddhist philosophy, take responsibility for everything that's ever happened to you. If someone's being enslaved by an entity like that, there's a karmic reason why that's happening. And that's where the soul that's being captivated by that, it's its karmic destiny to be captivated by that and to find its own way out of that bondage. And the only thing that does that is consciousness. So I come from just the basic understanding that we get realized as human beings.
Right.
And whatever journey we are on is an option for that to happen. And because that has been brought up to me before in another setting,
Right.
I would state that, well, I believe that there's a potential that would happen for unconscious beings.
Right.
And that would happen for the sake of slowly making them become more conscious of being bound so they can find their way out of that bondage and that illusion
Right.
and to go into something higher. So I would believe that that being would eventually be defeated over time through just simple consciousness.
Right.
Meanwhile, when we add, like, I am in Joshua Tree, I like I have seen innumerable UFOs in my lifetime, most of them right here where I'm at. And I have clients that are very much into the talk of Pleiadians, reptilians, human beings, and do believe that there is a reptilian lord that is captivating souls. And so this is a conversation I've had before that just used in that cloak of something reptilian. That very well could be. But I still believe that everybody's karma has put them in the situations they need to be in order to fully wake themselves up somehow.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Here's a question. Do you think any of these deities have incarnated as humans?
Okay, so India does discuss this, that every 27,000 years, the deity has to take one human form and then gets mukti right after, liberation. And so they eventually have to take one human form. The only ones that don't are the Mahadevas, which are the archangels. Mahadevas and archangels, they actually are in a timeless state where there is no time, and they will infinitely remain the main personalities of gods, but all the sub-deities that serve the Mahadevas have to take one human form, and then they get mukti. So that's in the Vedas. And see, I talk about the Vedas because they've produced master after master after master. And when it comes to deep philosophical conversations like this, I hold to the Vedas.
Right.
I hold to the Vedas because they come from masters. And, you know, Vedas have some pretty amazing things in there, including if you talk about Krishna coming from Sirius 9, which is a whole other star dimension, things of that nature. So I do like conspiracy talk, and I believe there's a validity in a lot of those things. Meanwhile, if you're focused on God realization and God consciousness, then you're destroying the entire illusion inside and out from the core.
Right.
So then
Exactly.
all of this stuff becomes illusionary over time. But does that mean that's not happening? No, I think that there, even a couple of the experiences I had when I was younger, there was one of them that was very specific to me that kind of showed something to what I'd call reptilian in nature, where I had an actual experience with something like that. But we would still believe that that being served the divine and was only capable of captivating people that had the karma, kind of like a magnet, just pulled in the spirits that were actually at that stage of consciousness where that's what their experience was necessary. It was a necessary experience for them. We would see that as being, even though him being a low, negative, let's just say, reptilian type of energy,
Yeah.
he's serving a purpose
Mhm.
because you can't captivate someone who's conscious. And, you know, the thing is, when it comes to all this deeper talk,
Mhm.
the human being, you know, and I'm out here in Josh Tree because I love one of the reasons is the fact there's a lot of activity out here with that other side, that
Yeah.
matrix type of energy, which is right on the other side of this world and this breath, are all types of entities and so forth.
Mhm.
There are there's a lot of activity where I'm at from
Mhm.
all levels. Like what you're
Mhm.
talking about, I
Yeah.
believe is very strong here. This is, I think, a gateway place. That vortex here, I think, is a gateway into some alien activity, which I'm
Yeah.
all about. Some
Mhm.
deep spiritual forces like Colie-esque energy. I feel India just pour out of Joshua Tree too. It's like this
Wow.
nice little portal here of energy. But I have to state the human being, I believe, is the absolute highest thing in all creation. And let me explain why. The Pleiades, as an example, have found peace, and they are far more peaceful than human beings. They're 75% mind, 25% heart. They have found peace, technology, but they haven't found love. That one word
Mhm.
is what the human being represents. And love is the struggle of the heart and mind and how they unify with each other. So, this slightly pathetic race and body that we're in, which is human, holds the highest level of energy in all of creation, which is love. And we have a higher being that radiates that energy. And I think the highest being in all of creation, we can call it the Christ, the Buddha, the Krishna, the Rama,
Mhm.
favors this race
Mhm.
because of the word love. Where Palladians have had peace and technical advancement, they don't have love. We do. And we become God realized beings, not all of us, but most of us. We
Mhm.
become God realized beings, and the God realized being holds the entire universe in his hand.
Right.
We get that. So my guru would say, and he did talk about this stuff as an Indian, which is very rare for Indians to talk about this stuff. So we are the envy of all creation because the highest being, and you can call it an alien if you want. I don't care what people call it. The high, let's use that word for it. The highest alien in all creation favors this pathetic human race
Mhm.
because they become, and I say pathetic because that's the way a lot of people that get in alien activity and get caught up in that, they see our race as being underneath Pleiades and underneath all these what
Mhm.
technical much higher forces. But my guru is like, no, they're not. They're envious of us
Mhm.
because the highest being in all of creation favors this particular being, the human being, and
Mhm.
it becomes God realized and removes itself from the play of creation altogether. So in the midst of me out here, and I
Mhm.
have seen really high vibrational stuff come out of alien energy. I've seen really dark stuff come out of that alien energy. I still believe that we represent the highest energy in creation, which is love. And we don't need technical advancement. We have it, but we don't need to have cities like the Pleiades do and places like that. This human race is about the merging of the heart and the mind.
Mhm.
And the struggle of this planet is the struggle of the heart and the mind. And my guru would always say, Earth is in perfect harmony. You're not.
Mhm.
He would say, if you can't
Yeah.
understand the perfect harmony of this earth, you don't understand that God is the creator of this universe. Then
Mhm.
God preserves this universe, and then he destroys this universe.
Mhm.
When God goes into the destroyer, then it's all, this can't be God. God can't be doing this. What forces? He's like, no. But when you understand God as creator, preserver, and destroyer, and that's why I worship these triple faced goddesses.
Mhm.
Hecate to me is a Godhead personality, creator, preserver, and destroyer.
Mhm.
When you understand that all three are God, not just the parts you're comfortable with,
Yeah.
then everything's in perfect harmony, even right now.
Mhm.
This planet is in perfect harmony. We just are out of harmony. So we see the destroyer as an enemy
Right.
entity,
Yeah.
not as a higher entity. So I believe in these things in various stages.
Mhm.
Being out there captivating souls and you know using them for whatever means. I mean, there was one person who was talking about a type of reptilian. It was Phil Schneider. He was talking about how reptilians abducted certain human beings, and a bunch of reptilians would get around it and put that human in so much fear but they would get high off the fear coming off of a human. Like the human being was like some drug, and
Yeah.
they'd probe it, inject it, bring out terror in it, and all the reptilians get around and snort it up like it was cocaine and get high off the fear, and then disregard the human entirely,
Yeah.
like killing them and getting rid of it. They only used it to get high off of it. So there was a being out there, Philip Schneider, who was a government whistleblower. He was the very first person talking
Yeah.
about alien activity. He was like, no, there are some real horrors out there that he goes, as soon as I heard them, put me in sheer terror. It was worse
Yeah.
than any horror movie I've ever seen. So, and I believe that these things on a larger level absolutely exist, but I believe our job as human beings is to focus on God realization. And we're
Yeah.
here to focus on realizing ourselves, and all of these things can be used as a medium for that. Even souls that were entrapped by some malefic or negative entity have to find their way out. And that
Right.
finding of that way out, and there are people that might have a responsibility to help some of those beings get out. And so, but I believe these are all a part of the play, and everybody's playing the role they need to be playing in that creation.
Right. And so why do you think these deities have to manifest as humans how often?
27,000 years.
Okay, every
Um,
27,000
because the
years.
human experience, the earth plane, is where you balance out all karma.
Right.
It is in a human body. You and I have, and this is Vedic philosophy. I'm not saying you have to believe any of this. This is Vedic philosophy. You have a human body. We're talking through our human bodies right now.
Yeah.
We have to master being a human. We have to master our humanness. The human body is connected to the sex chakra. That sex chakra creates human beings. That's what it does. It brings energy into form. So the first body is this human body connected to the sex chakra. Then we have a subtle body, which is connected to the heart chakra. The subtle body is the light body. But when you and I die and leave this world, we still have a body. And it looks very much like the body we are in currently. It's just a higher vibrational version of it. It's our light body connected right to the heart chakra. So when we drop this body, we go into the light body. And then we have the crown chakra, which is where we are all light and we are all one together. So we are light, individual connection to the light through the heart, and then we are human in our connection through the sex chakra. And so you have to master all three bodies, the human, the subtle, and the light, before you are done. So those beings that have existed for 27,000 years have to have one experience as a human being where they experience everything in that one life. What was that John Travolta movie where he was like an angel and he had one life to come down here? Michael. Okay. Okay. So I believe that, see, entertainment business can actually plug some truths out there without knowing, like the movie Matrix. Like it's like this is the universe working through the entertainment business. Michael was one of those where you experience almost everything in the human experience in one lifetime, and then you're done. Because they are masters of this body, they are masters of this body, but they have not mastered the humanness. So you're given one life where you master all this humanness, and then you're done.
Incredible.
But that's the lesser gods that serve the Maha gods or the archangels. The lesser ones are the ones that have to take a birth. The Maha ones, they're infinite, beyond time. They're not even experiencing time. They're just infinite consciousness in its infinity. So they don't need to take any human form. So let's explain where that comes from a little bit in Agora. Okay, so in the beginning, we were all infinite light, but unconscious light in the beginning. An ocean of infinite unconscious light. And that consciousness, or that unconsciousness, finally had one conscious thought. We call that God. He said, I am conscious. And then it was noted that in Indian mysticism, the goddess Colie came right from that thought of consciousness. And she became conscious. God became conscious, and then she became conscious. And then she created this whole web of creation. Individualized drops of the ocean, and said, we're going to send this unconscious ocean through the medium of life. So it returns right back to where it came from.
Mhm.
but conscious of itself. So God had a thought of consciousness, became conscious. The dark mother, Colie, Hecate, came right from that thought, webbed the whole creation. That's why the spider is very sacred in that, webbed the whole entire thing, and started individualizing drops of the ocean and sending those drops through creation. We are those individual drops. We are soul containers. I don't dislike that word. This
Mhm.
body is just containing a soul inside of it.
Mhm.
That's all this body
Right.
is containing a soul in it. And eventually we will go through a series of reincarnations all about our awakening. Every life is about a deeper potential for awakening, and we return right back to that ocean of light in the end, but we are fully conscious. And you're conscious of all three of your bodies. You're conscious of the humanness that was necessary to get you there. Your individual connection to the divine is in the heart chakra because you still have a light body, but you're also merging in the ocean of light at the same time.
Mhm.
So we go back to consciousness in the end, but we go right back to where we came from. That's the Agoric philosophy. I believe that, but I don't care if people believe that or not. I do not like people pushing their beliefs on people as if there's one fundamental fact.
Right.
As I said at the beginning, if you want to know how many paths there are, it's how many faces there are. This
Yeah.
is mine.
Mhm.
These are things I believe, but I don't disregard other people's beliefs because I do believe in the end we all kind of go back to the same place
Mhm.
through our
Yes,
various paths.
absolutely. So where would you say Christ fits in?
Well, I believe that, well, I belong to a Vedic tradition that Christ, Buddha, Krishna, Rama
Yeah.
were the same being incarnating at different times.
Right.
So I don't separate Christ from Buddha.
Mhm.
Um, I believe that we are all fighting over the same person,
Yep.
that one
Yeah.
fundamental being. I believe he is, I know people that into UFOlogy that believe he was that highest of all aliens. You can call
Mhm.
him that, you can call him whatever you want.
Mhm.
I believe that is the exactly what he says that he was.
Mhm.
I believe that this planet goes through various stages where we need that one being to
Yeah.
incarnate again to kind of upgrade. It's always done
Mhm.
behind the veil. It is never done publicly.
Mhm.
As I tell people, Krishna was a chariot driver. They didn't
Mhm.
realize he was the avatar until he was gone. Christ wasn't realized who he really was until he was gone.
Right.
It doesn't happen in everyone's view. So the
Mhm.
idea that some religion is going to get their, oh, we got our avatar, it's not happening
Mhm.
and could have already happened. I'm
Right.
one of the ones that believe that it happened recently. And they just come pull the planet into a new era.
Yeah.
So I believe that there is the one avatar. He is the son of creation,
Yeah.
the Christ, the Buddha, the Krishna, the Rama,
Mhm.
Zoroaster. We can even add there.
Yeah.
Uh, that keeps reincarnating. And what makes him different than a God realized master? A God realized master goes through the whole web of creation
Yeah.
and gets one stab at it in the end. He becomes a God realized master once,
Mhm.
where that's what's different with the avatar, the Christ, the Buddha,
Yeah.
the Krishna, the Rama. He's been there and keeps coming back over and over and over again.
Mhm.
And so, as it says, whether it's in Vedic philosophy or the Lord's Prayer, it's he who comes again and again and again.
Yeah.
It's like he is that one that has an infinite responsibility to creation to keep upgrading consciousness on this planet. And I believe every 2,000 years, approximately, he descends. I even believe there's minor incarnations of him. I believe there's major
I
ones
do as well.
and minor
Mhm.
incarnations of him.
Yep.
Like in India, they talk about Shankara being a minor incarnation, Shivaji being
Mhm.
a minor incarnation of him. But it's to keep consciousness rolling, to keep
Right.
everything moving.
Mhm.
And so a master gets one shot at it.
Mhm.
The avatar never stops. He's
Right.
infinitely upgrading humanity. So I put, I always make the joke because uh, the avatar is what we call that being.
Yeah.
That's my father energy.
Mhm.
Colie is my mother energy. And I said the only reason why I worship Colie and not the avatar is because I'm a mama's boy. And
Yeah.
I was built to see God in the feminine form and that force that keeps creation moving. It's her and him. That's
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
Those two forces keep everything going. Um, I had, Christianity a lot in my upbringing, even Mormonism and stuff like that.
Mm.
When I was in India, my very first trip, I was in Meherbad to see Meher Baba, and I had a dream of Christ on the cross, and I was literally at the bottom of the cross, and I was just crying. And literally Christ's blood was dropping on me in the dream. And I've never had a dream like this in my entire life. And I was wailing in the dream, just crying, like holding this cross up. And Colie came out of the clouds. She grabbed a hammer and just started hammering the nails in him. And he looked at me and said, without her, I can't do any of this. And I dropped Christianity that was in my subconscious mind just like that. I knew that Colie and him were completely intertwined. She was making him suffer on this earth plane because she was humanity.
Yeah.
She was humanity in this dream. She was the essence of human beings. And so as they connected through her making him suffer, he was alleviating all of these negative energies that she was attached to, and they were one. And I went, oh my God, Colie's the Holy Ghost. She is the Holy Ghost. I'm a Holy Ghost worshiper. That's what I am. And I believe that to this day,
Yeah.
that there are more feminine statements in the Bible of the Holy Ghost being feminine than masculine. So I believe people like me were just Holy Ghost worshipers. And Colie is those two words, holy and ghostly together. There's this whole fear, ghostly energy around her because she deals with work that's pretty dark, but she's holy. All at the same time, she is pure consciousness. So I believe that, and now from that day on, it was like I dropped Christianity like a hat.
Yeah.
Not because it wasn't real. I believe that that avatarish energy gave me full permission. You can let this go. Worry about your mom. Just focus on her, and that's it. And that's exactly what happened on that day. But I believe that being is exactly what it is and exactly what it says it is. And I believe this race that we're in is that race that he actually favors. I believe there are 18,000 other races out there. I believe this race is his race. It makes us the envy of all creation because the highest force in all creation, the sun of consciousness, focuses on this, what we call pathetic race.
Right. Brilliant. Brilliant. Do you think that was a past life memory that you had when you had that
I
dream?
do not know. I've never even thought about it that way.
Yeah.
My feeling was that it was a necessary experience to speed my progress up because we kind of know on a subconscious level who that being is.
Yeah.
But yet when you're taught growing up that it's this very limited, even grotesque version of that being is what is out there, I needed that approval in my subconscious to just remove it myself from it. I never looked back at it ever. I never struggled with it ever again. I never went back to it ever again. Meanwhile, I believe that force is my absolute father. I'm just, like I said, I'm just a mama's boy. And that force also likes me as a mother's boy and likes the fact that I'm here focused on the feminine divine. That force, I believe, is absolutely an approval of the life that I lead spiritually and so forth. But yeah, even in my world of, tattoos, which I will not be showing on this show, my right hand is dedicated to masculine deities and my left to feminine deities. And both of them play a huge role in my conscious. I just lean towards the left. Even Agora is a left-handed path. All these left-handed path things really suit me, and it's just natural for me as a person. That's all. Yeah.
So you said that these masters incarnate one time only to learn, to get that experience, and then
Let me go back real quick. Angels, not Maha, angels get one experience.
One.
They don't even become masters.
Right. Oh, okay.
No,
So
they might be gurus in their realm. A human being can become a master.
right. Okay. So the angels get one shot.
One shot, they experience the full human realm in one lifetime.
What happens if they fail?
Well, there isn't failure there.
No.
No, that would be orchestrated by the divine.
Okay.
That they did because we see them as connections, the different personalities. And could one fail? Yes, absolutely, but that would be divinely orchestrated. It means the universe would be, it's karma for that one to fail. They represent that in creation.
Would you be able to see through astrology, through Asterian, if there was an incarnated angel here on that one lifetime experience?
You know, I don't think astrology would tell me that. I think that there are ways to see that,
Yeah.
but I don't, because that's not anything in my training. I don't know what that would actually look like. Um, I would say that probably there would be what we call an incredibly strong stellium with
Mhm.
that purge. Stellium means a bunch of planets balled up in one area because they have to experience the whole journey of life in one particular life. I do know people that think they're that. I know many of them. You know,
Yeah.
it's like there's a general path that people take, and they start getting into, you know, I was Cleopatra, I was Mary
Mhm.
Magdalene. This is what happens. And I made a joke in one of my recent articles. I said we're going into Rahu and Pisces, and you know, people have these kind of spiritual delusions that come
Mhm.
active right now. And I have many clients, and it's going to offend like three of them, that believe they're the reincarnation of Mary Magdalene.
Right.
And they believe this really strongly. And I'm like, well, there seems to be a pattern in consciousness where you tap into various things. And instead of seeing it as I'm tapping into this consciousness, they personalize it and go, I was
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And so I have many Mary Magdalenes. I have several Saint Francis of Assisi's,
Mhm.
who believe they found their Claire and everything. But you're tapping into a consciousness. Mary Magdalene is gone.
Mhm.
She merged in with Christ right after that life. She doesn't have to ever incarnate ever again. We're tapping into energies that existed around this being, and they can be lived out today.
Yeah.
But if you are around a master force like that, you're gone.
Yeah.
You're not reincarnating thousands of years later as a real estate agent. And
No.
I say that because I have one that believes she's Mary Magdalene and she's a real estate agent. And I'm like, no, Mary's long gone, but
Yeah.
you are tapping into her essence and absolutely personal, you know, personify it in your life. I
Yeah.
don't interrupt it too much because I believe when you're identifying with something that strongly, that's divine,
Mhm.
it's an awakening experience, and you
Right.
don't want to interrupt it either because
No.
there is something actually in it.
Yeah. I agree with you completely. Would you be able to describe certain characteristics if you actually met the one that was real?
Well, I will go something that my guru Bao had said is that they generally have to completely humanize their experience until the end. They realized that they were that angelic force. It's something that they kind of realize in their own. Um, I've been around masters in India. I have been around really high, like Bal Kachuri was the highest level of master you can actually be around. And what you feel when you're around someone like that
Yeah.
is so high. Um, I'll never forget the very first time I ever saw Bao, just when we locked eyes on each other. I have an incredibly crazy reincarnation story that led me right to my Guru Bao. It's one of the strangest stories people have ever heard. But when I looked at Bao and he looked at me,
Oh.
there he lit me up. I had a massive Kundalini experience just by eye contact, and he was this kind of frail Indian. His guru Meher Baba made him
Wow.
cut his hair off and look completely normal and everything, so he could actually hide looking like a normal person. So Bao looked like the most average of all Indians, short hair, wearing a shirt with a tie on it. He was not like some yogi. I looked over him, he looked at me, and I Kundalini went right up my spine, like, who is that? And then, you know, and how I saw him and when I saw him was just an orchestrated story that is really, really deep and very, very personal. But I was arranged to meet Bao at a very specific time. Being around someone like that, who I think personifies some of the highest energies in creation, I think it would not be visible to me personally if someone in front of me was an angel. I don't think that would, because of being around him
Right.
and what I experienced the spiritual path to be on the inside. And nor would my philosophy even state the angel is something that people would want to be, because the human being has the potential to become God realized, where the angel gets mukti in the end, liberation.
Mhm,
So they may carry a charge about them,
mhm.
but they wouldn't be able to reach the heights of a God realized master. And that would represent something entirely different in creation. But could I be ignorant to something there? Absolutely, 100%.
Mm.
But I believe that that would be slightly disguised from me because of being around uh, two particular beings that were master class
Yeah.
personified. There was even time when I was selected to take care of Bao. This is, how do you even say stories like this? I would watch him at night. Bao, we sleep at night so we can go back to the seventh plane. Is the highest realm, that infinite ocean of unconscious. We go there every time we go to sleep at night.
Mhm.
So we go there to clear off the karma of the day before. That's why you can have like a headache at night, go to sleep and wake up and it's gone, even if you slept for like a few hours, because you went into this higher realm and it kind of gave you a little bit of a karmic cleanse, which we need to function. But a master who's already there doesn't need to sleep. He's already there. So they don't actually, so they imitate sleeping. So Bao would imitate sleeping. I would sleep, but I was not supposed to sleep. I'd have to watch him at night. So one night I went to watch him, and it's his big honor that your guru asks you, hey, so like if he needs a drink of water, you go get it. So that's what you do. You kind of watch over him. So there was one night I was just sitting there. I just sit there. He was laying in his bed. I knew he wasn't sleeping, but he would close his eyes. I fell asleep. And I fell asleep and I woke up and I look over at Bao and the entire universe was in the palm of his hand. And he was looking at planets, stars. He looked over at me and closed it and it disappeared. I knew that he set that up for me. I knew that he did. And then he also said, you're not supposed to go to sleep. So, and then he rolled over, like acting like I did something wrong. You weren't supposed to go to sleep. I saw the entire universe in the palm of his hand. I saw Saturn. I saw planets in his hand. And he wanted me to see that because there's no way. When I woke up, I just looked over at him and he closed it. It was just like that. I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
He had the entire universe in the palm of his hands. He was like looking at some other planet. Um, so these masters, and when you see a picture of Krishna and in his hand is a planet or stars, and this is not a joke. These masters contain this high vibrational experience, and being around that was absolutely the the crazy life I've had. I cannot tell you how crazy this life has been for me, including the reincarnation story that led me right up to Bao, um, which was not something I was doing in hypnotherapy, which is I did a bunch of hypnotherapy and came up with some life and went to India. And it's like, nope, that was not the life. That was my most recent life. I had another experience entirely of what my recent life was. Um, but point being is, I was dealing with a past life regressionist at one point, and we were working on a very specific previous life that I had. And when I went to India, I realized that was not my recent life in hypnotherapy. My guru actually told me,
Wow.
and some other person told me, and there was a buildup to me realizing my connection to my teacher. Wasn't about any personal greatness. It was
Yeah.
realizing my connection to a teacher, and it was a story that was so divine that it destroys the fear of death. And that's one of those things of like, wow, Bao,
Wow.
I knew you my last life. You orchestrated me finding you again. And how crazy is all of this, But when I was around Bao, I was recognized as another person from India, and they related to me. Oh, Swami so and so is here, and a big public thing happened with my previous life. My guru was like, "Oh, Swami so and so is here," and I'm like, "Wait a minute, I didn't know if I was a Swami. I thought I was the failed musician in a previous life that I was working on with hypnotherapists." My guru's like, "Nope,
Interesting.
I went to see you in 1963." He told this story in front of 1,000 people. I walked in to see him talk, and there's a deeper story to that. I He goes, "Here's Swami so and so. Someone else had just recently told me I was that Swami too, and I didn't believe it because I was doing passive aggression. And who told me that? The story is crazy." But I'm sitting in front of Bao, and he goes, "This is Swami so and so, who was a Swami that died in Rishikesh." He tells a story to a bunch of people. He says, "I was on my way to go see this Swami right here," pointing at me, in 1963. He's, real spiritual. famous people would go see this Swami right here. I said, I want to go see him and get a astrology reading from him. Very
Yeah.
famous Vedic astrologer, more or less more known for yoga and other things. But he's like, I was on my way to go see you because I wanted you to talk to me and I wanted your blessing. But I was following Mayor Baba. Mayor Baba was my guru, but I just wanted to know what you were about because everybody was talking about you in Rishikesh. And Mayor Baba, his guru, stopped him when he was on his way to go see me. He says, don't go see him. He's not as advanced as he says he is. He's going to die, be reborn in the West, and he's going to be your disciple. So you don't need to go see him. I have already arranged it. I went and saw him recently and set the entire thing up. And then I died right after that. He was told that, and he was waiting and did this incredible magic to get me to come find him again. And there's a
Incredible.
story around that, which was, and so when I first met Bao, my guru, he even brought in the same meeting people that followed me my most recent life, and they all broke down and started crying. Like, oh my
Oh
God. One of
my.
them, his name was Bal Natu, and he was an Indian. Bao said, here's Bal Natu. This was one of your disciples, your most recent life. And Bal is an old man at this time. He's like in his 90s, looks at me and starts crying. And he said, do you still chant Sanskrit? And I said, Om Gam Ganapati Namaha. And he goes, that was the mantra you gave me. And just hugged me. And we just sat there. And he said, you told me before you died you were going to be reborn in the West. And it was so shocking because you hated Westerners. And that whole thing happened. And then I had other people come in that knew me my most recent
Whoa.
life. Bao had brought them on my first meeting. And he was like, I want you to see. And they're like, you look the same, exactly the same. You feel the same. And the Ball in the Two is very specific because he was devoted to me.
Yeah.
But Mayor Baba, out of the blue, called Ball in the Two to him and said, I don't want you following. So he stole Ball in the Two from me my most recent life. And he stole Ball in the Two from him. Because but he told him the same thing he told Bao, who became my guru. He said, he's not as advanced as he keeps saying. I needed to keep you upgrading, and he wasn't going to be able to. He took you as far as he was able to go. I needed to take you one step further, but here he is again. And we had this full moment of exchange, memory, and that was my second trip to India, was
Oh my
running
God.
into this and meeting people. And so when I was going back to India, I was consistently dealing with people that knew me my most recent life. Bao asked me to keep training one of them. He goes, I want you to keep training this one. And he wanted me to give him mantras and things like that, which I did. And I was in my 20s, early 20s at that time. This guy was in his 80s. It was this crazy experience that was going on. And it was Bao uh, just orchestrating all of this stuff for me. But how I got to him was what is even crazier than that story about how he pulled me to India. But so, yeah, it was this incredible reincarnation story. And here I was meeting people that I knew my most recent life. And it was just not that long ago at that time. At that time, it was in the 90s. And in my previous life, I died in 1963. So it
Wow.
wasn't at that time that long ago that I was interacting with those particular people. But that was the beginning of my spiritual path. And it just was this incredibly highly elevated spiritual path dealing with Bao. Bao, every trip to see Bao was like this. Just this incredible, deep, rich experience where you just were totally beyond the world of death and dying. You were in a mystical trance. Um, the stories are just
Wow.
endless being around him. There's a must. A must is a god intoxicated being. They're completely intoxicated. They look like homeless people. They're only in India, but there are 7 planes of consciousness you go through before you return back to that ocean of light that we talked about. 7 planes. And there's a very limited amount of people on those 7 planes, very limited amount of people there. A must is someone that's going from like the second plane to the third plane. They're elevating, but they get stuck in between the two. And so they lose total consciousness of this world. They're only conscious of the other world, and they generally curl up in a ball and they look like a homeless person, but they are absorbed in what we call the higher planes of consciousness. There was this must, and they're only a master can tell who's a must and who's a homeless person, because sometimes they even just mumble gibberish. But they're sacred in India by Muslims and Hindus. They're sacred. Even Islam has musts in their religion, and they're stuck in heaven. That's the way they see it. India, they're stuck in between paths. And there's this must called Muhammad the Must, very famous must, and he's totally spiritually intoxicated. There are stories that if you walk up to Muhammad, and this must lived where I went in India, there are stories that if you go up to him, and if he says like "Chow," which means "get away from me," he can ruin your entire life. Means your entire life can fall apart from that point on for that entire life.
Wow.
There are stories in India about a king having a must in his, like, inside of his, like, fence, as an example. And the king's like, get that homeless person out of my out of away from my home on the other side of the fence. And someone goes down there and says, "Oh, wait a minute, that's not a homeless person. That's like a must." And the king's like, "I don't care. Get that homeless looking." And the king himself goes down and grabs him, and he grabs him, and his kingdom just disappears. And his children pass on, and all that. There's stories like that that are around must that you just don't mess with them
Whoa.
because they're God intoxicated. They're stuck in between planes, and they're really high in charge. So there's one of them in India, and you can find him on YouTube. His name is Muhammad the Must. Must is spelled M-A-S-T. It means a God intoxicated spirit. So there's one where I go in India. His name is Muhammad the Must. And Bao, who is now my guru, this is like trip number 4 in India, says my nickname was Mahayogi because in my previous life, I was constantly in spiritual practices, worshiping the goddess and things of that nature. Said, it's your day to walk Muhammad the Must. I'm like, oh, no, no, no. I don't want to walk Muhammad. I've heard the horror stories. There was even a story recently about how this girl just recently got breast implants and went and grabbed Muhammad just to give him a hug, and he said "Chow," and her breast burst. And if that happens on a must, means they're clearing out your karma. They're doing something that's good for you, even
Yeah.
if it doesn't look good. They're doing
Mhm.
something that's favorable for you. And that story existed. And I just heard that story. I'm like, oh, Bao, I don't want to walk Muhammad. I'm not. I don't want to walk Muhammad the Must. And he's like, no, no, no. He wants you to walk him. I'm like, wow, what if I'm like, I don't want something awful happening to me. I just heard a horror story. Is like, you're walking Muhammad the Must today. So he walks me over, and I see Muhammad. And when I see him, and when you see him on like YouTube, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about because there's images of him on YouTube. I see him from a distance, and I'm like, oh my God, the energy coming off of that person, I can feel it. And I'm getting scared at this time. This is trip number 4. I'm still in my early 20s, and I'm scared to go walk this God intoxicated being. So I go over there, and he looks up at me, and he goes, "Chai." He wanted me to bring him tea.
Yeah.
So I go get chai, and I'm like, uh-oh, okay. So at least he didn't say chow, which that was bad. They were like, if he says chow, that means some chunk of your life is getting ready to end.
Yeah.
So I go get the tea, and I bring it to him, and he puts his hand out to grab the tea. I drop the tea because he pushed out of my hand, and he grabs my hand, and I wake up in the hospital. I passed out. I went through some incredible charge, and I woke up in a hospital just crying and crying. This doctor bends over that knows Muhammad the Bus and says, "We're going to call this a heat stroke, okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, we'll call this a heat stroke." And I curled up in a ball and just started crying. The love that was going through my body was so unbelievable and so powerful. I could not believe that was going on. And Kundalini going up my back, I could see worlds just for a period of time, but I was scared still because these experiences were on a whole other level. And I started hitting my own knee to try to bring me back down to my body to stop this current of love that was just pouring through my body. And the next day it's gone, and then day 3 you're trying to get that feeling back. But it was so elevated and so powerful. And then that began this whole journey into these Kundalini types of experiences. After that happened, I would start having them with ease. I had one before Muhammad. Oddly enough, I had one here in Joshua Tree as a very young person. I had come to Joshua Tree one time, and I was with a Brahmin priest that was chanting Ganesha mantras, and he was chanting, and I started chanting one with him, and it activated my Kundalini, and that was out here in Joshua Tree, and then this though was on like the next level. But it was a part of my journey, and I wasn't the only person going through things like that again. So I don't like to separate myself to act
Yeah.
like I'm important in that energy. This was the life in India for all of us that were around Bao. We all had these amazing awakenings through him. Yeah.
So, all right, I'm thinking, I have so many questions. How were you led there, and how did you know where to go and who to go to? How did all that happen? And I'm aware that we're at 2 hours and
I'm good to keep going. So,
17 minutes.
okay.
But how did this all happen? How did
Okay.
you even know where to go, who to go to?
Yes. And this is, I have said this on one other podcast. So, but this was like 20 years ago. So that this is when it was fresh. I haven't said it in a really long time. So, um, I was in a music project in the 90s. I've been an astrologer and musician my entire life. I still am a musician. People don't know that, but I was a musician when I was very young. And I was on tour. Well, actually, we were opening up for the Counting Crows. This was in the 90s,
Oh.
and but they weren't that popular then, so it was very early on. And I started having health problems. And I went to a doctor after a series of incredible panic attacks. I started developing Epstein-Barr chronic fatigue syndrome, and I went to a doctor, and the doctor said, "You have congenital heart failure. You're not probably going to live to see 21." And I was at 18 at this time. This is true. So I had an incredibly dark upbringing. My mom tried to commit suicide in front of me several times. And so I was smart enough. I was not a spiritual person yet. I was fascinated with astrology, though. And I was even giving readings at that time to people. But on the road, I was making beer money. So I'd give readings, make a little money, drink beer, go back on tour. I was 18. But I started having, I even fainted once on stage, and even my band was like, "We don't know what's going on here. You might need to figure out what's happening." And I started getting really nervous because I could feel something going on. Epstein-Barr came in. Then I went to a doctor. He goes, "Here's, here's an image of your heart right here. It's way too big. It's your heart's swollen." And he goes, "You're probably not going to live till you're 21." And I had obviously a total breakdown. I left music for that time. I drove past this is a very short version of the story. I drove past a sign in on Ventura Boulevard in Sherman Oaks, California, said hypnosis with heart. We can cure any health problem if you're willing to go within. I see the sign. So I walk in there and I'm like, I want to do hypnotherapy. I was diagnosed with congenital heart failure. And there was a doctor, a hypnotherapist in there, and he was like, "So tell me a little about your mom and dad." I'm like, "No, my mom tried to commit suicide 7 times in front of me. I mean, she would slit her wrist, take blood thinners, so it was a big mess. Like I'd walk into my mom as like a bloodbath." And he goes, "So this is where this comes from. We can get rid of your heart problem. I think we're gonna try. I believe that your heart is swollen due to all this emotional pain that it's seen." Um, could have been true, not true, but I was pulled into this. And after like the third or fourth session with him, which we were covering, being a past life musician that failed in Hollywood, and all this pain was in my heart. There was drugs involved, which is odd because I was not interested in drugs early on in my life at all. And we were doing hypnosis on this failed musician in Hollywood. And out of the blue, he said, "Do you want to go to India?" I'm like, "Sure. I've always wanted to go to India. As a matter of fact, when I was a kid, it was the only place on the map that I would say I want to go." Well, my mom, she was like, "We're Mormon here. What do you want to go to India for?" Like, "I don't know. I just want to go to India." So he said, "We have an extra ticket." This was in the 90s. So like if you had a group of 20 people going to India, if one of them dropped out, you could actually take that ticket. You can't do anything like that now. But back then someone dropped out and they're like, "We have an extra ticket. You can go to India. You just have to contact the travel agency and we're going to put your name on it." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I want to go." Meanwhile, after this whole buying this ticket, this particular guy turned out to be this really well-known false guru who believed he was the reincarnation of Jesus. I didn't know this, so I started distancing myself from that group. But I had this ticket to India, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to deal with this group anymore. This guy just got kind of weird, actually. All of a sudden, the past life regressions were no longer about like, hey, are you struggling? It's like, can you see who I am in these past life regressions? Can you see who I am? He was trying to convince me that he was Jesus without saying it. He's like, I want you to see it. I don't want to say it, but you know who I was. Crazy false guru stuff. Meanwhile, I had this ticket to India. My health is, and this was very disappointing to me because I was having some improvements in my health because of this hypnotherapy. I was actually feeling some big changes in my life. So I'm like, I'm just going to endure this group of people that believe this guy was Jesus, which is great. That got loony, but I'm gonna go to India for myself, and I'm just gonna go there and have a good time, and even just hang out with this group and go there, just go to India. But I was disappointed because the work we were doing was starting to be tainted by this guy's ego, really disturbing me. So we go to India, and when I get off the plane in India, I remember India was like the back of my hand, and John, who is this hypnotherapist, did not want me in the group hanging out with him. I was a young guy. There were a lot of women there. He was like, I don't want another guy here. So I would like you to leave. And you don't really believe that I'm Jesus, I can tell. So I'd really like you away from this group. He didn't say it in those words.
Yeah.
He was like, is it possible for you to go your own way? So when I was there, this is trip one. I'm going to make this short. I asked someone in Mumbai. I was diagnosed with congenital heart failure. I was told I'm not going to live until I'm 21. Is there anyone that deals with death around here? I don't want to read a book. I want experiences. I want direct experiences of the other side. So this guy who was connected to this ashram, who is right outside the Mumbai airport, says, yes, there's an Agoric tribe. This is how I got to Agora. And they only focus on death and dying. And their whole thing is do whatever you can do to produce spiritual experiences. We don't want faith here. We don't want beliefs here. We want you to have the experience so you know yourself. I'm like, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So I go to Khajuraho, India, which is where they make fun of Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, the Colie worshippers and that. This is the hub of that belief system. Agora is sacrificing people and all this stuff like this. Very scary people, but they dealt with death and dying. So I end up there. And so the guy's name was called Babaji. And someone said, I went to Khajuraho, rented a hotel, and I said, I'm here to see, the Agoric tribe called Babaji. And like, oh, wow, okay. You can, tomorrow, this is where he's at. Yeah, he's always there talking about things. He has broken English too. He can speak a little bit of English. So I go see him, and he looks at me and he says, why are you here? And I said, well, I was diagnosed with a heart problem. And I was told I wasn't going to live till I was 21. And he goes, well, why do you want to die? And I said, I don't. I'm actually here because I don't want to die. And he goes, oh, no, no, no. You want to die. He says, if you can tell me why you want to die, maybe you'll live. But if you sit there, oh, no, no, I don't want to die. Maybe you're going to die. He said, I want you to go to your hotel room and tomorrow come back with 20 reasons why you want to die. And I went in that hotel room and cried. I wrote down 20 reasons like it was nothing. And all this guy was doing is saying, you're responsible for this, okay? If you want to live, you take responsibility for this. No more, I'm a victim of life. You take responsibility. And my mom trying to commit suicide in front of me. I also went through a horrific breakup at a very early age. I had all these things going on. So I come back and tonight we're going to be worshiping Colie. All of us get in this group and Om Janti Mangala Kali, all these mantras are being chanted. I'm learning mantras, teaching mantras. Colie enters my life, Colie, and he brings Colie right in. I go home. My mom, who's Christian, what was your trip like? Came to see me. Huge statue of Colie in my house that I got back on a suitcase. She's like, I don't like this. I don't like any of this. This is the devil. That image right there of Colie is when Ugliest things I've ever seen. This is darkness here. I don't want any of this around me. So this is all, by the way, my guru working. We're getting ready to go into. So I'm like, Mom, this is working for me. You know, da da da. My mom lives in Dana Point, just about 15 miles away from the only Colie temple, the Colie Mandir in Orange County. She happens to live right by it. So my mom, out of anger, goes to the Colie Mandir and walks in there to see what I'm into. She wanted to see Colie up front. She walks into a room and sees an image on a wall of some Indian Swami and passes out. The Brahmin there, which I still know to this day, wakes my mom up, says, "What's going on?" She said, "That is my son on the wall." So this was the guru working. My mom said, "That's my son right there." So the guy said, "No, he was a master, a teacher, and but I believe you're connected to him, and that's what this is about." My mom said, "I'm not connected to any of this stuff. That's my son, and I'm his mom." And the guy goes, "We got books that he'd written. One of them was on astrology. The other was like, that's my son. He's always been interested in astrology." That's She calls me back in the day of rotary phones and says, "You're never going to believe I know your previous life. You were a Swami in India. Swami so and so," gave me the direct name. I said, "Sorry, Mom, I've been doing past life regression, and I was so and so in Hollywood as a failed musician, died on drugs." You know, she's like, "No, I'm your mom. You're hearing your Christian mom say something. I know your previous life. I'm sending you his books." She sends me books. One's on astrology, one's on goddess worship, the other one's on hell and the infernal realms. I was like, "Oh my God." So anyways, I look at the picture and I'm like, I look so much like him. I said, "Mom, honestly, I just look like this person. I have to go with the fact that I've been changing because I've been doing hypnotherapy and I found my previous life." But I said, "Mom, I believe this is for you, that you're having this experience. I'm going to India again. And how about I buy a ticket for you to come with me to India?" And that's what this is about to me. I said, to me, it's not about me being this past life. This is about you coming to India with me. She said, "I want to go. Never thought in a million years I'd ever go to India, but I want to go." I buy my mom a ticket and then panic. Go, "Oh my God, when my mom sees this Agoric tribe, it's not going to make her feel good. This is going to make her feel worse about where her son's at." So I contact the Hindu temple in Malibu. I had a brushing up with a Brahmin priest there named Krishna. I asked for Krishna, rotary phone, back in the 90s. I said, and Krishna gets on the phone and he said, "Hi, Jade." And I'm like, hi, Krishna. I said, "My mom is going to India with me." He's like, "So congratulations. How amazing. You're bringing people to India." I said, "No, that's not what I'm calling you. My mom's going to see this Agoric tribe and panic. Do you know anyone that talks about Jesus? Anyone? And I want my mom to hear so she doesn't get so uncomfortable. I
Yeah.
want her talking. I want her to hear someone talking about Jesus." She goes, "Yes, Bal Kachuri. This guy gives lectures about Jesus, but it's Jesus as Buddha and Krishna and Rama. It's all one." And like, that's good enough for me. She just needs to hear some talk of Jesus going on. And he goes, "Here's the time that here's his schedule. I know Bal personally, very enlightened master, amazing human being. Go see him." I look at my ticket. I'm like, he talks on the day that we arrive. And this is, I can't change the ticket. I mean, we're going to arrive 2 hours before this talk. And arriving in India on time is like, it's like an impossible task anyway. So we're on the plane. First thing we're going to do is get off the plane and go hear about talk about Jesus, which ended up being at like some school gymnasium. And so my mom on the way is like, "I cannot believe you do not believe you were Swami so-and-so, and that you're really going to discredit your own mom." And I'm like, "No, I just have done like 70 sessions now on this previous life. And I firmly believe I'm this failed rock star in Hollywood. So we land, we get on this bus, we have 20 minutes before 20 minutes before his talk starts. We just barely got there, got our stuff, and the drive is 45 minutes. So I'm like, Mom, we're already going to miss it, but let's just try to get there. And my mom didn't even want to really go, but I wanted her to go because I want to hear my mom, hear a Hindu talk about Jesus. So we get on this bus, we get there late, we walk in the side door, Bao's talking in front of 1,000 people and looks over and says, Swami so-and-so just walked into the room. My mom collapses. I even had to stop her head from hitting the ground. I look up at Bao and I said, I was Swami so-and-so. And he said, yes. My mom wakes up and says, I've been trying to tell him that for weeks. And he looked at me and he goes, your mom knows. Listen to your mom. He actually orchestrated the whole thing from my mom. He was the reason the experience happened all together. And then he gives this big speech. I was on my way to go see this one in 1963. And oh, he's so advanced. And then Meher Baba, my guru, says, don't go see him. He's not as advanced as he says.
Wow.
And then after that talk, Bao said, Fall in the two, come over here. I've arranged this. Here's Swami so-and-so, your guru, your past life. And that's how it all started. My mom started the whole entire thing and came back. Mind was blown away from all of this. And then took a Christian turn with it all and started to see it as darkness and the devil working and things like that. So
Oh, really?
she went right back into her old consciousness. That was an experience just for me to get
Right.
to Bao, and he couldn't figure out a way to get me to him other than my mom having that experience in the Colie temple. So that's the level
Right.
of arrangement Bao went through to get me to be his student again.
Incredible.
Yep.
And your mom just stayed in her belief system of
She's let it all go now. I mean,
Mhm.
she's still alive.
Yeah.
Um, Meanwhile, this is a subject that's still really difficult for her. It was like like talking about it. It's not like it was when it first happened. She was telling everybody. I told him he was this and told a whole
Yeah.
array of people around her, and then kind of drifted out of all of that. And now it's an uncomfortable conversation that all happened because she's like, I don't know what any of that meant. Like she felt even a control in it that she thought was, and that was just Bao opening up doors for her to say, this is who your son is. I can't figure out a way to get him to me. So we're using you as a medium to get him here. And we just started right where we left off. He even brought some students I had in that life and said, you're going to keep
Yeah.
teaching them. Because I'm like, I don't know if I know what the hell to teach them. He's like, you know mantras, just give them mantras. And he's like, just keep this going. This is how reincarnation works. You just pick up right where you left off. And then I'm just sitting there going, and you know what this did? This did the most amazing thing at all. My health changed because of this. So when I got back after this particular trip, I went to another doctor and I was downgraded to an enlarged heart, not congenital heart failure, which I still have to this day. It means I could literally drop dead any day. But it was downgraded, means just take care of your health. And, it's not the greatest thing in the world that you have an enlarged heart, but you can still live and survive a much longer period. So I was downgraded. I even believe, because people are asking me to sue that doctor, I believe he was also used by Bao to get me to India as well to start this whole thing. So all the things that happened to get me to India, from my mom being suicidal to the diagnosis, and and then when my work before Bao was done, he said, I also want you going back into music now too. I want you to. He very specifically wanted me in astrology to give people the energy of my spiritual path. But as I said, you have to master all three bodies. He wanted me in music mastering my human body, because as spiritual people, we forget how important it is to master your humanness. So he wanted me still connected to things that brought me down to the human element, where he said, astrology is going to keep you up here. I still want you working out the humanness. And I got a record deal right after Bao died. Right after my guru died, I got signed and had been a touring musician under another name entirely ever since as well. So he wanted more agora, the darker stuff. He wanted an expression for it, but he didn't want that to be astrology. He
Right.
wanted that to be creative
Yeah.
expression. So my music projects have never been, you wouldn't expect them. because someone has been to India over 34 times. You would expect me to do music like that, but it's the agoric path that's in that,
Yeah.
and the light he wanted in astrology, and unaffected and not really agoric. He
Yeah.
wanted music for that, astrology for just the light that I experienced in life. Yeah.
It's mind blowing. And what is your band called?
I can't. I am forbid to harmonize these two.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
and the,
Yes.
Alyssa, my assistant, has two jobs. One of them is booking my clients. The other one is making certain my clients never find it. So she is
Oh,
constantly
right.
online separating all of it because they're two different paths.
Yes.
The
Yep.
few times they've intertwined hasn't worked out in the way that I would like it to work out. People, they expect me to do Yanni, and when they find out that it's nothing like that. Meanwhile, the project is highly successful. We were just on the charts. We did a four uh, country tour in Europe. We went on the charts when we were in Europe. You
Yep.
know, it's
Mhm.
it's a bigger project, but it's where I believe the darker agoric Colie path I've
Yeah.
been on is expressed, where astrology is the light path I've been
Right.
on.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Now, would you be interested in doing a part 2, and maybe we can go into more of your experiences and also discuss the characteristics of each of these gods, like Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Mercury, and,
Would
you
love
know,
to.
Prometheus, et cetera, et cetera. Yep.
At 100%, would love to do that.
This has been amazing. And before we just wrap up for this one today, because we're at 2 hours and 40 minutes, which I know could keep going for sure. Would you like to just say anything before we finish for today?
Well, and talking about where we're at in the world is a good closing point. It's
Yep.
like, it's important to realize that we're on this planet for realization only. We're not here for earthly happiness. Earth is school, it's not your home. These higher realms of conscious are your home. The things that take place on this planet are here just to lead you onto your path. And so, in this crazy world that we're living in right now, it's very important for you to just focus on God realization and the realization of the self and not all of this stuff. And so, I'm trying to tell people the ways of the world are the ways of the world. You can use the ways of the world to get realization. That's kind of what's happening right now. We're evolving and growing. So, the challenges and all those dark things out there, it's just consciousness forcing you to grow up. That's all it is. And the challenges in life are just helping us evolve. So don't personalize what's going on in the world. It's just there to help you evolve and to step into yourself. And astrology is that foundation of these events and all this stuff. And it's just about a major awakening, which we all are currently involved in. I can't remember what 2019 felt like. Neither can you. It's like it's gone. We have evolved so quickly in a short period of time. The challenges in life are here just to help us evolve and step into ourselves.
And I love what you said, grow up. Because I
Yes.
think that is exactly where we're at finally.
Yeah. 100%.
This has been so profound. I'm looking so forward to part 2, and I know everyone will too. Jade, oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. These are things I've never said before, just so you know. A lot of things I said here were first time, so that means a lot to me. And I will absolutely be looking forward to part 2.
I'm touched. Thank you. This is I have one word for it, really. It's profound. We're just gonna maybe go as long as we need to in part 2, and not if we can do it that way, that would be better,
Absolutely. Yep.
because I just love the flow. So I want to thank everybody for being here, and we will see you soon.
I'll be looking forward to it. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.